tear film, it comprises of 3 layers, very specific locations, but of late, there's a modern view where the components are not layered specific. There's a lot of intermingling, and this is what is the current view. Now, prior to 1995, that is when the National Eye Institute, there was a thought process, why not to have a uniform definition of dry eye? Prior to that, different countries, different authors, different people, different scientists have their own definitions, and there was no one specific definition which can be implemented, especially for the research purpose. So this was the definition which was given way back in 1995, which clearly states that it's a disorder of the tear film due to tear deficiency or excessive evaporation, which causes damage to the interpalpebral ocular surface associated with ocular discomfort. But this definition is also not adequate. So subsequently, the dry eye workshop way back in 2007, they have included the pathogenesis of this very dry eye. Besides the definition which was given in way back in 1995, they have included even the increased osmolarity of the tear film as the root cause of pathogenesis of it, which ultimately cause the ocular inflammation. So this is the etiological classification. As per Dewes, they have included even the environmental factors into it, besides the very clear-cut classification as aqueous deficient and evaporative. They have included the internal, interior, and the external factors which contribute to its pathogenesis. Now, regarding the Sjogren syndrome, which is one of the very important cause of dry eye, we know that this is the normal picture of the lacrimal gland, a very well-defined SNR structure. But what exactly happened that there is T cell infiltration in this condition, which produces cytokines, and these cytokines is what stimulate B cells to produce autoantibodies, and this is the autoantibodies which destroy this SNR structure. So in a patient with Sjogren syndrome, we can see this structure where there is no SNI, so obviously there is no tear which is coming from. Similarly, the Sjogren syndrome has been classified into primary and secondary, and the rheumatoid arthritis is a very important cause of secondary dry eye. Then non-Sjogren syndrome, we have primary lacrimal gland deficiency, or it could be secondary to say various diseases like lymphoma, syphilis, leprosy, and so on, and obstruction of the lacrimal gland ducts, which usually occurs after chemical injuries, which causes subsequent fibrosis, and sometimes reflex hyposecretion, as we see in patients who have undergone LASIK or who are wearing contact lens for a prolonged period. So evaporative dry eye, the other type, one is aqueous deficient and another is evaporative. It's again of two kinds, intrinsic and extrinsic, and these are the various factors which are contributing to it. Now, in the end, I would like to state about the mechanism of dry eye. This is very important to understand why we are concerned about it. You know, if you look at the most important factor in dry eye is tear hyperosmolarity. And this tear hyperosmolarity is what causing ocular inflammation, and that is what the patients are reporting to us. Now, why there is a tear hyperosmolarity? It could be due to excessive evaporation, due to various factors, or it could be there is a less production of the tear film. Now, this tear hyperosmolarity is what causes activation of certain epithelial enzymes. And these epithelial enzymes, then there is production of cytokines from these cells. And these cytokines is what causes damage to the ocular surface. And this damage causes tear film instability, and this is a vicious circle sort of what starts in the patients with dry eye. And also these cytokines, they cause nerve stimulation and subsequently cause pain and various symptoms of dry eye. So now I request my next speaker to continue with the clinical features of the dry eye.
Thank you, Alok.